about it and what really happens. For example, it's necessary to capture an enclosed endangered species in order to prevent their extinction and ensure their survival. Keeping animals in captivity because it deprives them of their instinctual behavior, and industries such as circuses may use aggressive behavior in order to train them. All of the negative consequences that arise from animal captivity, there are also several reasons to why we should capture and hold animals.
We'll start her car and then seal herself good in the.
Hi, this is Dr. Evie.
Hello.
Veterinarian. Okay, I'm just gonna get right to the questions. Can you define what animal cruelty is, I guess?
I would say that animal cruelty probably has a wide range of meanings, and it could be pretty much anything that decreases the quality of life of an animal or causes suffering or pain.
Have you personally seen or encountered many cases of animal cruelty here?
Unfortunately, yes. We've seen cases. I actually had a dog that got set on fire one time. That was pretty heartbreaking. We see cases where we would suspect kind of animal cruelty, and sometimes you have to be really careful when you go approaching that with an owner. A lot of times they're not doing it on purpose, but maybe they just don't understand what they're doing is wrong. And then there are cases where the Humane Society gets an animal from the street or from a house and brings it to us that is a cruelty case, and they tell us. So yeah, we do see it a lot.
And you kind of already talked about a specific one. So is there like a more common, like a really common case of animal cruelty that you see most often?
I would say the main types of things that we would see in a small animal setting like this would be more kind of neglect of maybe a chronic disease. So let's say you had a big dog that was really old that couldn't get up, and it was just laying there and like going to the bathroom on itself. It was like covered in urine and poop and all that lovely stuff back there. And then if they're down and they can't get up, then they're gonna get maggots, stuff like that. So that would probably be the most common thing, like older dogs. Yeah.
So
It's really sad.
Neglecting to take care of a problem would be considered a form of animal cruelty.
Yes. Now, whether or not you could actually, legally go after someone for just not taking care of their big dog or putting their dog to sleep, probably not. But in my opinion, that's cruel to an animal. At least put it to sleep. So, yeah.
Do you know of any methods, or have you participated in any ways of rehabilitating animals that have been previously abused in the past by their owners? Or?
Yeah, a couple. The dog that I mentioned that was actually set on fire. That dog, we had at the beginning to keep it alive and treat it because it was a criminal case.
Right.
But after the case was over, we were allowed to keep the dog, and we rehabilitated her. We treated all of her wounds, and we found her a home. And then also I had a dog who had a leash like embedded into her neck that had been there for weeks to months. I mean, it was basically like sawing through her neck. And the owners, I gave them a big talking to, really angry with them, and I said, look, I'll keep this dog, sign it over to me. I'll treat the dog and find her a home, and I did, and she's fat and happy with one of our other veterinarians' dads. So yeah, we get to sometimes. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Do you know what happens to animals, like if they're taking, you already described what you have experienced, but what happens to other animals that get sent to you who've come from abusive homes? Like, do they just get put in pounds, or are they put down?
If they get confiscated by the Humane Society, let's say the Humane Society gets called out to a house where they think there's animal cruelty going on, if there's not an actual medical condition that needs to be treated at a hospital, they will take it to the shelter. If they're gonna press charges, which they can do because they're the law, they usually do keep the animal alive as long as it's not suffering too badly, because that's evidence. If it's really, really bad, then they may take it to the Humane Society and they may euthanize. So yeah, that would probably be the main. But they would keep it alive if they're gonna press charges.
Okay. Yeah. What are some of your personal thoughts on how animals are treated at zoos and shelters and sanctuaries?
As far as zoos and SeaWorld and all those places, I think zoos really strive to create an environment for people to interact with animals that they normally wouldn't get to interact with, obviously, on a regular basis. And they're really important for education purposes. They're important to raise money for wild animals and be advocates for animals in the wild. So I think they definitely have their place. And I think in the last 20 years, the care that animals get at zoos and aquariums has gone up dramatically. So, you know, basically the main thing when you're keeping an animal, like let's say a lion. Sorry. When you're keeping like a lion or a whale in captivity, obviously that's in such a small area in the wild where they would be roaming over huge, landscapes and stuff. You really have to focus on environmental enrichment, and basically that's placing things in their environment, teaching them, training them, letting them use their minds so that they stay healthy and positive. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you have to kind of give them what they would normally get in the wild. You have to give it to them, in the zoo. Right. And that takes a ton of money and time and training and all of that.
Right.
So.
Okay. Next question. Do you know of any behavioral problems that the animals can develop while they're kept in captivity within confined spaces or cages that don't have environmental enrichment?
Yeah, they definitely can develop a lot of problems. One of the main things, so animals will get bored. Again, a lion, his instinct tells him to go hunt. Well, if he's not hunting or having some sort of scenario where he feels like he's hunting, they can develop abnormal behaviors. There's a term called a stereotypy. And basically that means a repetitive behavior that's not normal, and it can be bad. So for a lion, maybe he would walk in a circle around his cage all day long. For the sea animals, they can do similar things like swim in circles. Some of them could have self-mutilation where they would just start like grooming themselves and licking and pulling their hair out. Those would be kind of the behavioral side effects of not having environmental and brain stimulation. And then you would have the whole other kind of avenue of diseases, skin diseases. That would probably be one of the big ones. Animals that are kept on cages that are used to being on sand, they can get diseases like penguins get something called bumblefoot, I believe it's called, where their feet grow a certain bacteria or fungus from just sitting on wire cages all the time. And so obviously that's not something they would get if they were in the wild. So you have to be aware of those and know how to treat them or know how to prevent it. In enclosed areas, like let's say in shelters, so going back to small animal, think about all the respiratory viruses that are floating around in a building that's housing cats and dogs. So those types of animals are going to get kennel cough, upper respiratory infections. It's just all enclosed and there's not good ventilation. So you got to worry about ventilation and cleaning protocols.
So it would be easier for disease to spread to other animals.
Exactly, because they're just in such close quarters. So yeah.